Going to explain a mystery thriller movie called The Gateway. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens with a woman named Jane who stealthily enters the house holding a screwdriver. She then sees a family which consists of a woman and her kids, and the shocking part is that the woman looks exactly like her. Jane is stunned by the sight and quietly walks away from the house without the family noticing. The scene cuts to several weeks earlier when the scientific world is debating the existence of parallel worlds. I guess we know how that's going to end. Some people suggest that things might be different in other worlds, while others are sure that there can be complete doubles of the existing universe, where the same people live and the same events happen. We then see physicist Jane Chandler return home from a run, where her husband Matt is serving breakfast to their two teenage children, Samantha and Jake. They tease their mother about losing weight and laugh with each other. "Mom's fat!" making it clear that the family shares a friendly bond. After breakfast, everyone goes their separate ways, and Jane arrives at her lab where her assistant Reg is working. Their boss is unhappy with their slow progress and has given the duo only 1 month to produce results. The scientists begin to experiment, for which Reg places an apple inside the teleportation cabinet. They power up the machine, gradually increasing its energy output. An explosion occurs inside the chamber, but the apple remains intact and in the same place. Later, Jane goes to the riverbank where she and her husband like to meet after work. She talks about the failed experiment, but Matt reassures his wife, saying she is very talented and will definitely achieve her goal.
Even though your goal is fucking stupid, honey. Teleportation? Are you kidding me?
The next morning, when Jane arrives at the lab, she orders Reg to produce power far exceeding their normal output. The man protests, but still does as Jane asks, and an explosion occurs inside the chamber. They notice that the apple is no longer inside, but it isn't in the neighboring chamber either, which means the apple has mysteriously vanished. Later, Jane goes to the spot where she usually meets her husband after work, but he doesn't show up today. Suddenly, she receives a phone call in which Matt tells her that he loves her and the children before the line suddenly goes dead. Jane rushes home, repeatedly trying to call him, but he doesn't pick up. Shortly after, she arrives at the scene of a horrific accident and instantly realizes that Matt is the victim. A shocked Jane screams and desperately tries to help him, but it is already too late, and Matt has died. A few days later, Matt's ashes are scattered at their favorite place and life begins without him. Jane is devastated by the loss, which deeply worries the children. Her sister Ruth does everything she can to support her by caring for the kids and looking after Jane. She encourages her sister to return to work so she can begin to heal, but Jane can't stop thinking about Matt's last phone call and wishes that she had told him she loved him too. Nevertheless, she eventually returns to work and resumes her teleportation research. One day, Jane realizes that the experiment was successful since the apple disappeared. It must have ended up somewhere, possibly in a parallel world. That would mean there's a similar chamber and a team of scientists just like them on the other side. Jane and Reg write down their parameters and place the paper inside the teleportation chamber. They begin the experiment, and the piece of paper disappears. The next day, while Jane is making breakfast for her kids, Reg urgently calls her to the lab. She immediately rushes over and learns they have discovered a piece of paper inside the chamber with the word "greetings" written on it.
Greetings? They must be freaking nerds over there.
Moments later, another object appears, and it turns out to be the bitten apple, confirming that there are people on the other side of the bridge. Jane and Reg send a video camera through the chamber, and it soon returns. After turning it on, they see a lab almost identical to theirs, along with its director, who turns out to be Jane. The theory of parallel worlds is finally proven true, and there are people on the other side who are just like them. Next, Jane volunteers to travel to the parallel world, but Reg is firmly against the idea, as it could have disastrous effects on their DNA, and the person could die, or turn into a fly or something. Jane agrees, but later she comes up with a plan and asks Ruth to take care of the children. That night, she returns to the lab alone, steps into the teleportation chamber, and activates the machine. Sometime later, she regains consciousness in a strange laboratory, steps outside, and stares in amazement at the city. Jane then heads toward the river, and as she approaches the dock, she catches sight of her husband Matt. He turns around and freezes in shock when he sees her, while Jane is equally astonished to find him alive. Matt questions whether she is really here, since in this world, Jane died. She assures him that she is real, and mentions their children, but Matt is stunned by the revelation because in his world, they never had children. Jane then tells him everything about her research and the breakthrough they made. She explains that in her world, Matt died in a car accident, and he reveals that the Jane of his world died the same way. Overcome with emotion, the couple embraces with joy at finding each other again, and Matt asks Jane to take him back to her world.
Let's get in a car.
Shortly after, they arrive at the lab in their original world, where a stunned Reg scolds Jane for bringing Matt back from a parallel universe. He warns her that she can't simply move people between different worlds, and asks how she intends to explain that Matt is suddenly alive after everyone believed he was dead. However, Jane remains convinced that everything can be worked out. Sometime later, Jane returns home and sends Ruth home before talking with her children. She explains her work on teleportation and parallel worlds, then reveals the incredible breakthrough she has made by finding their father alive in another world. Jane tells them that Matt is in the car, and the children immediately run into the yard. But there's no one inside the vehicle. Just as they begin to think their mother has completely lost her mind, Samantha notices Matt standing beneath a tree, quietly taking in this new world. The children rush over and embrace their father while Matt looks at them in amazement.
Wow, you guys do look like my jism.
Later, the family gathers in the living room and the children ask Matt questions about his world, and he reveals that in his universe, they were never born.
I used a condom because I wasn't an idiot over there.
Later, Matt enters a room and looks through photographs of his counterpart, while Jane asks the children to keep everything a secret before joining him. She is afraid of losing him again, so she asks him never to leave her, and they make love. In the following days, life gradually returns to normal, and Jane goes back to work while Matt cooks breakfast and takes care of the house. He constantly admires this peaceful world and admits to Jane that he has never been happier. One day, Jane finds a strange device among her husband's belongings and becomes curious. When she asks about it, Matt explains that it is a weapon, as his world is filled with dangers, and warns her not to touch the dangerous device. One day, while the family is having breakfast together, there's a knock on the door, and it turns out to be Jane's mother. Matt manages to hide, but she notices an extra plate and asks about it. Jake quickly lies that he got himself a second plate. After Grandma finally leaves, the family looks for Matt, but realizes that he is nowhere to be found. Turns out Matt has been wandering in the streets, where one of the neighbors suddenly recognizes him. He thinks that Matt faked his death to collect a large insurance payout, so he refuses to leave him alone and begins blackmailing him. Enraged, Matt pulls out his strange device and fires it, burning a hole through the neighbor's chest and killing him instantly.
Now who's a fraud, you upside down bitch?
Later, Matt returns home, where Jane scolds him because she has no idea how to explain his sudden reappearance if someone saw him. However, Matt assures her that it's no big deal, and once again promises not to leave her. That night, Jane wakes up and realizes that her husband is not in bed. She goes downstairs and discovers Matt standing in Samantha's room, quietly watching her sleep. The sight unsettles Jane, and she later confronts him about it. However, Matt explains that he still can't get used to the fact that he has a beautiful daughter, so he was just admiring her. The next day, while returning home from work, Jane notices a police car outside. An officer asks if she has seen anyone suspicious around, explaining that a man was recently murdered in the park, but Jane says she hasn't seen anything. Upon returning home, she tells Matt about the murder, but he pretends to know nothing about it. That night, Jane hears her husband's angry voice as he yells at Samantha for painting his portrait. He believes the girl's clumsy drawing is meant to mock him and storms out of the room. Jane comforts her shaken daughter, explaining that Matt is still struggling to adjust to this world. However, the children insist that this Matt is very different and nothing like their real father, adding that their mother doesn't truly know him at all.
I know his dick is the same, kids.
Later, Jane goes to speak with Matt, and he apologizes for his behavior. She is unsettled by the man and suggests sending the children to their grandmother's house for a while. When she asks whether he is truly happy here, Matt accuses her of trying to send him back and asks if she is threatening him. The next day, Jane is driving the children to Ruth's house when Matt calls her, and she tells him that she is heading to the lab after dropping off the kids. Matt then asks if Reg will be there, and Jane says yes, since he's her assistant. But Matt replies that he is much more than that, which scares Jane. Upon returning to the lab, Jane tells Reg that she is frightened by this new Matt and asks to be sent to his world so she can learn more about him. Reg agrees and prepares the teleportation chamber, after which Jane steps inside. Not long after, Jane finds herself in the other world, where she heads to the house that she shared with Matt. She searches through the rooms, and in the bedroom she notices someone lying beneath a blanket. Jane pulls it back and freezes in horror to see the body of her counterpart with a burnt hole in her chest, and immediately realizes that Matt killed her, or maybe someone else with a laser gun. Meanwhile, in the original world, Matt arrives at the lab and begins questioning Reg about Jane's whereabouts. He then starts tampering with the equipment, and although Reg tells him not to touch anything, Matt suddenly unplugs the teleportation device and knocks Reg to the floor. He then fires his weapon, burning a hole through Reg's chest and killing him instantly. At the same time, Jane is trying to return to her world, but the teleporter displays a system error. Jane tries to teleport a few more times, but the machine doesn't turn on, and she realizes what has happened. Frustrated after repeating the same process over and over, she falls asleep right at the table. Sometime later, she is approached by the Reg of this world. This one's probably named Reg. That's probably his name. I've been saying it wrong this whole time. They begin talking, and he tries to kiss her, revealing that the two had been in a romantic relationship in this universe. Reg mentions that he has been working on a teleportation machine at home, and when Jane asks if he has one there, he confirms that he does. They quickly head to his house, where Jane repairs the machine using the parameters from her own world and decides to test it immediately. She soon teleports back and arrives in her world along with Reg. Next, the two drive to Jane's house, where where she asks Reg to stay outside while she enters the home with a screwdriver. But once inside, she sees another version of herself, along with Matt and the children happily chatting at the dining table. Before they can notice her, a panicked Jane runs away and tells Reg that they've ended up in the wrong world. The pair returns to the lab and decides to repeat the experiment, but before that, she tells Reg that she is not from his world, where Jane was murdered. She believes that Matt killed her, and that she must stop him before he hurts anyone else. At that moment, a police officer arrives and knocks on the door, so Reg speeds up the process and Jane teleports away alone. Meanwhile, in the original world, Matt calls Ruth pretending to be Jane's assistant and gets the address of where the children are staying. At the same time, Jane arrives at the lab in the original world and hurries to her sister's house, but the house is empty and she calls Ruth, who reveals that she is bringing the children to Jane's home. Jane then notices Matt approach the house through the window, so she quickly slips out unnoticed and hurries home. Upon returning home, Jane finds her children, so she tells them everything and asks them to lock the doors and hide. Not long after, Matt arrives home looking for the children, but instead comes face to face with Jane in the bedroom. She reveals that she knows he murdered his wife, but Matt coldly insists that she cheated on him and deserved to die. He then raises his weapon and prepares to shoot Jane, but at the last moment, Jake sneaks up behind him and strikes him over the head with a baseball bat. Later, the family ties up Matt, takes him to the lab and activates the device to send him back to his own world. But before leaving, he curses at Jane and promises her that he will come back to take revenge on her. Matt is then teleported and soon finds himself in a dark world filled with endless mazes. 2 months later, Jane finishes breakfast with her children and Ruth, after which everyone leaves for their daily routine. Jane is left alone in the house when Reg knocks on the door and tells her that something terrible has happened. Jane is frozen with terror as he reveals that she is in the wrong world, and the movie ends there.